The gate was open. He stopped his horse at the road's edge and looked. It was iron and cedar, hinged to a thick post, the kind of gate that took 2 hands and a hip to move. It stood pushed back all the way, not blown by wind, not left ajar. Pushed back and left. He had the certificate of purchase folded in his coat pocket. He had put it there that morning the way you put something you already know by heart. Without thinking, without ceremony. He touched it once now, felt the paper through the wool, and left it alone. He got down and walked through. The land ran flat from the fence in both directions before the low hills started. The fields were pale and dead. The soil had cracked along old furrow lines, the grass long gone, the ground hard and closed. Fence posts leaned at wrong angles. Several were down, the wire between them dragged in the dust. The barn was to his left. It had been a big barn once, the kind that meant a working outfit. The boards on the upper half had gaps where the wood had pulled away or been pried loose, and the loft door was missing entirely, nothing there but a dark, open square. The roof sloped down on one side in a long, slow bow. The house sat beyond and to the right. 2 stories, a leaning porch, the rail gone except for one post at the far end. The roof sagged in the middle but held. He could see the line of it against the pale sky. He stopped and looked at the barn. The morning sun had not come around to it yet. It was still in shadow. Something moved in that shadow. He went still. Not afraid, or not exactly that. He had been afraid before, and knew what it felt like, the heat rising in the chest, the way sounds got hard and close. This was something smaller. The cold thing at the back of the neck that said, "Wait." 5 shapes stepped out of the shadow and into the light. He counted them before he was thinking about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They were orcs, all 5 of them. The smallest stood a head taller than him, and they were lean in a way that was not right for their kind. Not the lean of hard work, but the lean of going without. The way a thing looks when it has been too long without enough. Their clothes were plain and worn through at the knees and elbows. They had been here a while. It showed in the way they stood. They carried nothing he could see. They stood at the edge of the light and looked at him. He looked back. For a long time, neither side moved. The wind came in from the north across the dead field, moved through the open place where the loft door had been, and kept going. That was the only sound. Then one of them spoke. Not the tallest, a woman standing in the middle of the group, who had been watching him with a particular stillness. Not waiting for him to do something, but measuring him the way you measure weather, the way you try to know a thing before it arrives. "The well works," she said. "We replaced the bucket rope 3 weeks ago." He looked at her. He looked at the gate he had just walked through. His hand went toward his coat pocket and stopped there without going in. What he decided in the next few minutes would cost him more than anything the war had asked. He did not know that yet. He stood at the edge of the land he had just bought and looked at 5 people who had nowhere else to go. 3 weeks before that morning, he had ridden out to look at the property. He did not get off his horse. He pulled up on the road and looked through the gate at the dead fields and the broken fence lines, and the barn with the gaps in its upper face, the loft door long gone, and at the house beyond it, the roof line bowed in the middle, and the porch rail mostly stripped away. There was a well inside the fence. He could see the rim of it from the road. He could not tell from there whether it held water. He thought, "It will take a long time to fix all of that." He had a long time. Then he rode back to town. He bid on it anyway. The auction was held on a Tuesday in the county office. There were 12 men in the room, most of them looking for a working spread at a reduced price, something they could bring back. He was not looking for that. He had a figure in his head, and he watched the number rise, and when it cleared what the other men were willing to carry, he was the only one left. The county clerk recorded the deed, and he paid the filing fee, and he took the certificate and folded it twice and put it in his coat. He had been holding that money for 7 years, since before the war, adding to it slowly, and spending nothing he did not have to spend. He had not known what he was keeping it for until he saw the notice in the post office window. 40 acres and the structures standing on them, sold as found. He read it twice, took it down from the glass, and carried it home. He wanted land at the end of a long road. He wanted to sit still and hear nothing and not be asked anything by anyone. He had been wanting that since he came back from the war 3 years ago, thinner than he had left, and slower in a way that had nothing to do with his legs, and found that the life he had left behind had not held its shape while he was gone. His wife had not waited, and that was not a simple thing to say, because she was not a simple woman. She had believed for nearly 2 years that he was dead. She had made her arrangements. By the time word came that he was alive, she had already made them well, and she was not wrong to have done it, and he had not asked her to undo them. There was nothing to be angry about. He had come back changed in ways he could not name, and she had moved on in ways he could not fault, and he understood that, and it did not make it easier. He had stayed in town for 8 months after that. He worked what work he could find, and kept to himself. He slept in a room above a stable, and took his meals alone, and did not talk to people he did not have to talk to, and he found that this was not much different from how things had been even before. Then one morning he saw the notice in the post office window, and something in him that had been waiting without knowing what for went quiet and decided. In his coat pocket, alongside the certificate, he carried a small, smooth stone. He had carried it since the morning he left for the war. She had pressed it into his hand at the door without a word, and he had put it in his pocket, and it had not come out since, through everything that followed. He was not sure what it meant anymore. He was not sure it had to mean anything. Some things stayed with you, not because they meant something, but because you had gotten used to the weight of them. He touched it now, the paper and the stone together in his coat, standing at the road's edge on the morning he had come to take possession of 40 acres and whatever was on them. He walked through the gate. He had left his rifle with the horse, on the road. He had not decided to leave it. He simply had not taken it when he came through, and then the gate was behind him. He crossed the yard toward them, and stopped about 20 feet away, and put his hands at his sides. The 5 orcs did not move. The yard was quiet. The wind had dropped. He could hear the creak of the open loft above the barn, a board working in the frame somewhere, and his own boots on the dry ground. A rusted plough frame leaned against the fence near the barn door, half buried in the dirt, too far gone for any use. He looked at them. Up close, they were different from the shapes they had made, stepping out of the barn. The tallest stood to his left, a woman, a head and more above him, broad through the shoulders, with a long scar along the left side of her jaw, old and white, healed long before this morning. She had her arms loose at her sides, and her chin level, and her eyes on him without any urgency. The way a person watches something they have already decided is not a threat. The younger man beside her had his arms crossed. He was looking at a point on the ground just in front of the veteran's feet. Not yielding. Working to hold himself in one place. The woman who had spoken from across the yard stood in the middle of the group. She was shorter than the tallest by half a head, which still put her above him. Her hands were at her sides. She watched him with that flat, steady look, the one that had nothing readable in it, The fourth was an older man, heavier in the chest, with a grey streak through the hair above his right ear. He stood with his weight back, settled, the way a man stands who has waited in worse places than this. The fifth hung back by half a step, small for an orc and young, a girl by the look of the face. She had not looked at him directly once since he came through the gate. None of them were armed. He checked that without making it obvious. He looked at their hands, calloused, all five. The younger man had fresh scrapes across his knuckles, the kind that came from pulling wire. He had marks like that on his own hands. They waited. He waited. The board in the loft shifted again. "How long have you been here?" he said. Not quite a question. The woman in the middle answered. "Before the auction notice went up in town. 8 weeks, maybe a little more." She paused. The gate was unlocked. The house was empty. We did not think anyone was coming. He had expected a number. He had not expected the rest of it. She kept going. "We have not taken anything from the house. We slept in the barn. The rope on the well bucket was rotted through when we got here. We replaced it. We fixed some of the wire on the south fence. That is all we have touched." He did not answer. He looked at the barn. He looked at the fence to the south, the line of it, what he could see from here. He looked at the well and at the new rope coiled on the post beside it. She had told him about the rope in those first seconds, when he was still standing at the edge of the road. He had not known then what she was doing. He understood it now. She had been showing him what they were worth. He looked back at the five of them. He said nothing. He looked at the barn for a long time. He looked at the fence, and the well, and the dead fields beyond it. A crow went over. The barn roof showed where it had been letting water in, a grey stain along the north slope. The morning had gone quiet. There was nothing left to say about 8 weeks. He turned back to the five of them. "The fence along the south side needs wire and 3 posts replaced. The barn roof is leaking at the ridge. The well casing is cracked. The fields want turning before they're worth anything. That is what needs doing." The woman in the middle looked at him. "In exchange for what?" she said. He looked at the barn, not at her. "Somewhere to be," he said. She held that for a moment. He watched nothing change in her face, and was not sure what that meant. He had not offered charity, and he did not think she had taken it as such. Then she turned and said something to the others. Low, in their own tongue, a short exchange he could not follow. The older man said something back. The younger one said nothing, but he uncrossed his arms. The girl behind them had gone still in a different way, the way a person goes still when they are paying attention rather than when they are afraid. The tall woman with the scar had not moved or spoken. She had been watching him the whole time. The spokesperson turned back. "We can do the fence and the roof, the well casing. We would need to know what tools are on the property first. What we cannot do, we will tell you. We will not take wages." He looked at her. "I did not offer wages." "No," she said. "I know." He said nothing for a moment. The wind came through from the north and moved the dry grass along the fence line. "Agreed," he said. He turned and walked toward the house. He had not shaken a hand. He did not think a hand had been expected. Behind him, he heard low voices, words he could not make out, and then the creak of the barn door on its hinge. Then quiet. The house was 30 feet away. He did not look back. He did not bar the door that night. He had thought about it, standing at the table with the lantern low, eating what he had made, salt pork and what was left of the cornmeal, enough and no more. He had thought about it, the way you think about something you have already decided against. The door stayed the way it was. He could hear them outside. Not clearly. Sounds through the wall, the occasional low word, once something that might have been a laugh. He did not know what to do with that. He had not eaten near company in more than a year. He had not missed it, or he had told himself he had not missed it. He could not say, right now, which of those things was true. He washed the plate and set it to dry, and took the lantern to the back room. He lay down with his boots on his back, one arm across his chest. In his coat pocket, on the chair beside the bed, the small, smooth stone lay where it always lay. He thought about reaching for it. He did not. He listened to the house settle. Outside, something moved, one of the 5, crossing the yard toward the barn or back from it. He tracked the sound until it was gone. Then he lay still in the dark and let whatever was going to happen next wait until morning. On the first morning, he came out before the sun was fully up, and they were already at the fence. He stopped at the porch step and looked. The older man was driving a post with a maul, clean swings, not many wasted. The younger one fed wire. He could not see the others from the porch and did not go looking. He stood there and listened to the sound of the maul for a moment. Then he went to the well. He had not asked them to start early. He did not say so. The water was cold and clear. He pulled 2 buckets and carried them to the garden patch along the east side of the house, which was not a garden yet, but would need to be. And then he went to the barn to see what had been left there. There was not much. A rusted cultivator, 1 blade missing, a half-empty sack of something that had gone to dust, a hand scythe with the handle worn smooth. He checked the corners the way you check a place you are not sure of, and when he was done, he walked out the back of the barn and around to the fence. The tall woman with the scar was there. She had been pulling old wire off the line, coiling it as she went, setting the coils in a stack away from the path. She worked without looking up. He watched her for a moment, and then walked down the line to see how far they had gotten. They had gotten farther than he expected. 3 posts reset, 2 new. The wire was taut where it had been run. He tested it with his hand. It held. He went back to the house. In the afternoon, he worked on the barn roof alone. He found enough boards in the loft to patch the ridge, not repair it properly, just close the worst of it against the rain. He worked slowly, and the sun moved across the sky behind a thin layer of cloud, and by the time he came down the ladder, the shadows were long. The ridge was not fixed, it was patched. He knew the difference, and put both things on the list he kept in his head. He crossed the yard on his way back, and stopped at the well. Someone had cleared the loose mortar from around the cracked section of casing, and laid a flat piece of board over the break to keep more debris from falling in. It was not a repair. It was someone keeping the problem from getting worse until the repair could happen. He stood there for a while, looking at it. The Orcs had finished the fence line by then. He could hear them at the back of the barn. He walked around. They were pulling warped siding boards off the north wall, stacking the sound ones flat in a row. He had not mentioned the siding. He did not mention it now. He went back to the house. That evening he set a pot on the stove. He made a stew from what he had, dried beans and onion and a little salt pork, more than he needed for one. He ate his portion at the table, with the lantern lit and the door open to let in the cool air. When he was done, he filled a bowl and set it on the step outside and went back in. He did not watch to see who came for it. Later, when he put out the lantern, he opened the door a few inches. The bowl was gone. He closed the door and went to bed. He told himself it was practical. 5 workers cost nothing if they fed themselves, but they worked better if they did not go hungry, and this was his ranch and his work getting done. That was what he told himself. He told himself that with some care, and it held up each time he examined it, right up until the point where it did not hold any more. By the fourth day, he had started to see them as separate from each other. The older man worked methodically. He planned before he started, looked at a thing from multiple angles, did not begin until he had what he needed. He was never the fastest. He was never wrong twice. The younger one was fast and not always careful. He would set a board and nail it before checking whether it was true. Half the time it was. The other half he pulled it and did it again without complaint, which was its own kind of efficiency. The tall woman with the scar worked in silence. Not the silence of someone who had nothing to say. The silence of someone who had decided that the work was what there was and talking added nothing to it. She was the one he trusted most to look at a thing and understand what it needed. The girl stayed near the animals when she could. There was a bay horse in the barn, left by the people who had owned the place before him, thin and wary and inclined to bite. The girl talked to it throughout the day in low words he could not hear. He watched her from the barn door one afternoon. She was standing with her back against the stall rail, not facing the horse, just present, and the horse had its head near her shoulder and was not moving. He had not been able to get within 10 feet of that horse without it pulling back into the far corner. He watched until the girl shifted her weight, and the horse still did not move, and then he went back to work. The spokesperson moved between the others, stopping here and there, sometimes helping, sometimes just looking at what had been done. She was the one who decided what needed doing next, when there was a choice and the others looked for a signal. He had not asked her to take that role. He did not ask her to stop. He was splitting wood behind the house on the 4th afternoon when he heard the maul stop at the fence and did not hear it start again. He did not think much of it. Later he went to the barn to check the roof patch from the inside. He found what he was looking for, and then found something else. The door hinge on the north stall had been loose when he arrived, a long lean to the left every time it moved. It was not loose now. Someone had packed the plate, shimmed it, reset the screws. He had not said a word about that hinge to anyone. He had not written it on any list. He ran his hand along the plate. The screws were flush. The door moved clean when he swung it. He stood there for a moment. He did not call out. He did not go and find whoever had done it. He put the lantern down on the rail and looked at the hinge for a while, and then picked the lantern up and went out. He checked that the bowl was on the step before he went in. He lay down that night and thought about the girl and the horse, the way the horse had stopped rolling its eye when she came close. That horse had not let him near without pinning its ears since he arrived. He had put it on the list, meaning to work on it when he had time. He had not had time. The girl had found time on her own, between the other work, without being asked. He thought about that for a while. He thought about the hinge, about the fence posts, and the siding boards stacked flat along the barn wall, all of it unrequested, all of it done without a word. He was not sure what to do with people like that. He was not sure he had ever known any. He had not planned to feed them inside. It was cold that evening, the kind of cold that comes in fast off the North Hills when the sun drops, and he had a fire going, and enough in the pot for all of them. When the spokesperson came to the door and stood there without asking, he stepped back from the threshold and did not say no. They came in one by one. The girl was last. She stood in the doorway a moment, looking at the room the way someone looks at a place they have only seen from the outside, then came in and found a place near the far wall. None of them sat at the table. They sat on the floor or leaned against the walls, close to the heat, and ate what he had made without comment. He ate at the table. He did not ask them to join him there, and he did not tell them they could not. The bowls were plain, and there was bread left from the morning, and he put it on the table where they could reach it if they wanted. The older man took a piece. Nobody made anything of it. For a long time, after the bowls were set down, nobody spoke. The fire worked. Outside, the wind moved the loose boards on the barn's north face, the ones they had not gotten to yet. He was aware of the breathing of 6 people in a room that had not held 6 people in it for a long time, maybe ever since he bought it. It was not awkward. That was the thing he noticed most. It should have been. It was not. The spokesperson spoke first. "We came from a town called Redholt," she said. She said it to the fire, not to him. "We lived there 3 years. They let us in because there was work and no one else to do it. When the work was done, they told us we were not welcome to stay. They gave us a direction to go." She paused. "We went." There was nowhere to stop. He listened. He did not ask anything. He had been in enough places to know what it meant when a group had nowhere to stop. It meant you stayed moving, and you counted what you had, and you did not let yourself think too far ahead. After a while he said, "I had a wife." He had not planned to say it. It came out the way things come out when the room is warm and the fire is going and you have been quiet for long enough that the quiet loosens something. "She thought I was dead for 2 years. By the time word came back that I wasn't, she had made her arrangements. She wasn't wrong to. I don't say that to be generous. She simply wasn't wrong." His hand had gone into his coat pocket without him deciding to send it there. He felt the stone, the smooth weight of it, and left his hand there for a moment, and then took it out and put it in his lap. "I came here because it was at the end of a long road," he said. He was saying it to the fire. "That was the only reason I needed." No one answered. That was the right response. Someone put another piece of wood on the fire. He did not look up to see who. The fire picked up and settled, and the room stayed warm. Later, one by one, they lay down where they were. The girl curled near the hearth. The older man put his back against the far wall. He did not tell them to go to the barn. The barn was cold, and the house was not. And there were more of them here now, and the house was better for it, though he did not say that out loud. He went to the back room and lay down on his bed. He could hear them breathing in the next room. It was not a thing he had words for, and he didn't look for words. He closed his eyes. He slept. The fence along the south line was nearly done by then. He saw the rider about mid-morning from where he was working, still far down the road, moving at a deliberate pace. Not someone in a hurry. Someone making an official call. He set down the wire stretcher and watched. Behind him, the work sounds at the barn went quiet. He did not look back to check. The hay in the field beyond the fence moved with the wind. Nothing else out there moved. He stood and let the rider come. The man came up to the gate and stopped. He was a county deputy, lean, grey coat, a badge on his chest and a leather satchel across the front of his saddle. He took in the yard in one long look, the veteran at the fence line, the 5 orcs who had come to stand in the space between the barn and the house. Not in a line, just present. He looked back at the veteran. "Morning," he said. "I'm looking for the owner of this property." "That's me," the veteran said. The deputy reached into the satchel and produced a folded paper. "A complaint was filed with the county land office 3 days ago. The claim is that the title on this property may not be in order. I am required to make a verification." He held out the paper. The veteran did not take it. He turned and walked to the house and came back with the certificate of purchase. He unfolded it and held it out. The deputy read it carefully. He read the filing date, the clerk's seal, the legal description of the property. He turned it over and looked at the back. He folded it and handed it back without comment. "That's in order," he said. "I know," the veteran said. The deputy opened a small notebook and began to write. He wrote slowly, more slowly than the situation required, and the veteran waited without speaking, and the orcs waited too. The deputy did not look at them while he wrote, but he was aware of them. It showed in the way he held his pen, in the deliberateness of each stroke. He was a man being careful not to look at something. 5 individuals residing on the property, the deputy said. Not a question. A note being read aloud for confirmation. Working the property, the veteran said. The deputy wrote that down too. He capped the pen and looked up. The complaint came from a neighboring landowner, he said. I am not authorized to go into the details. My business here is to verify the title. The title is verified. That concludes what I came to do. All right, the veteran said. The deputy closed the notebook. He looked once more at the 5 orcs, without expression, the kind of look that is making a count and not admitting to it. Then he turned his horse and rode back down the road. The veteran watched him go. He watched until the man was a small shape at the far end of the road, and then a little past that, the way you watch a road until what is on it has finished telling you what it came to say. He knew what it meant when a man did his job correctly and left without settling. The deputy had checked the title. He had noted the orcs. He had written it down. He had not said anything off the record. A man who keeps to the record is a man who has decided the record will be enough. He turned around. The 5 orcs were still in the yard, watching him. "Fence," he said. They went back to work. So did he. They came in the middle of the afternoon, when the light was flat and the work was quiet. He heard them on the road before he could see them, the sound of multiple horses moving together. He was at the back of the barn patching siding, and he came around to the front and stood in the yard and watched them ride through the gate. 3 riders. The man in front sat tall on a good horse, well-fed and well-shod, and he wore the kind of clothes that said he had not come to do anything with his hands. 2 men rode behind him, heavier and quieter, staying a step back and to the sides, working men brought along to make a point about numbers. The veteran stood where he was. The lead man pulled up about 20 feet out and looked at the house and the barn and the fence line, and then at the veteran. "I'm the owner of the Caswell parcel to the east," he said. "I've had an interest in what happens on this property for a number of years. You'd be the new buyer." "I'm the owner," the veteran said. The man studied him for a moment. "The owner. Yes." He looked at the barn. "I understand you have people on the property." "Workers," the veteran said. 5 of them," the man said. "Orcs." He said it the way you say a word that is doing work for you, not the word itself, but what it is meant to point at. "I'll be plain with you. I've been in this county for 22 years, and I have standing with the people who decide what the county looks into." He paused. "There are people here who feel strongly about where orcs settle and what it does to the character of the land around them. Some of those people have standing to make things quite difficult for a landowner who is seen to encourage it. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here as a neighbor, to let you know how things stand before they get further along than they need to." The veteran said nothing. "There are questions about how this property changed hands," the man continued. "Whether the process was clean, whether the occupancy at the time of sale was properly disclosed. Those are the kinds of questions that take time to resolve. And while they are being resolved, things become uncertain for the person holding the deed. Courts move slowly. Banks are cautious. Neighbors remember. He was careful. He had come prepared, and he was being careful. The deputy had been careful to stay inside what his badge required. This man was being careful to stay just outside what would require him to put his name on anything formal. The veteran let the silence sit for a moment. Then the barn door swung open. He did not turn around. He heard them coming, footsteps in the dry yard, and then they were there, one by one, 5 of them placing themselves in the space around and behind him. Not in a line, not arranged for anything, just there. The tall woman with the scar came to his left and stopped. The older man took the right. The younger one settled behind his right shoulder. The girl came last, quiet, and did not go far. No one spoke. The 2 men behind the lead rider had gone still. They were watching the 5 orcs with a particular attention, the kind that comes when something is not quite the size or shape that was expected. The afternoon was windless. A crow crossed the far field. Nobody tracked it. The lead man's horse shifted under him. He brought it back. He looked at the veteran. He looked at the 5 orcs. He looked at his 2 men. Then he looked back at the veteran and took a slow measure of the distance between where he sat and where the veteran stood. Nobody moved. Not the veteran. Not the 5 orcs at his back. Not the lead man on his horse. Not his 2 riders. The wind was down. The horses stood. The afternoon had gone completely still. A fly moved through the air between them. Nobody tracked it. The lead man's 2 riders looked at each other. One of them looked at the 5 orcs, and then looked away and then looked back. He could not seem to decide where to put his eyes. The antagonist was still watching the veteran. The veteran looked back at him. He did not put his hands anywhere in particular. He did not shift his weight. He had stood in harder ground than this, and he had stood in it without a weapon in his hand, and he was standing in it the same way now. One of the orcs behind him moved. He heard it, a small shift of weight in the dirt, someone settling in for a long wait. That was all. The veteran knew what was being counted. He had been counted before, across worse ground, with men who had more than numbers in their hands. He knew the shape of a calculation running its course. He let it run. The lead man's horse took a small step forward, and he reined it back without looking down. The veteran said, "The land is mine. The deed is recorded with the county. The certificate of purchase is in the house, if anyone wants to send for it." That was the only sentence he had. The sentence was enough. A legal fact stated plainly is a different instrument than a threat, and he had meant for it to work the same way. The lead man looked at him. He looked at the certificate that was in the house, which he could not see, but could not any longer pretend might not exist. He looked at the tall woman with the scar, who had not moved since she came to stand to the veteran's left. He looked at the older man on the right. He looked at the younger one behind. He counted the girl at the back. He counted again. Something moved across his face. Not fear exactly, but the recognition that this was a different kind of ground than he had expected. He had come prepared for one thing. He had found another. The 2 men behind him had already understood this. They were sitting their horses at a slight angle that had nothing to do with the road and everything to do with wanting to be somewhere else. He pulled his reins. "This isn't finished," he said. He said it to the veteran, not to the orcs, which meant he knew which one mattered. "You're new here. You're new. You don't understand yet how a county works or how long a man's reach can be when he's lived in a place his whole life. You'll learn." He turned his horse. His 2 men turned theirs. They rode out the gate without looking back, and the sound of them faded down the road, and then was gone. The dust they raised settled slowly in the still air. Nobody cheered. Nobody spoke. The veteran stood where he was and listened to the road go quiet. He did not feel what he thought he would feel. He was not sure what he had thought he would feel. It was quiet. That was all. When it had been quiet long enough, he turned around. The 5 orcs were behind him, where they had been. The tall woman with the scar, the older man, the young one, the spokesperson, the girl. He looked at them for a moment. They looked at him. Then the older man turned and walked back toward the fence line where he had been working. The young one followed. Then the others, one by one, until only the spokesperson was left. She looked at him a moment longer than the rest. Then she turned and went back to work too. The veteran turned around and looked at the empty road for a while. Then he went back to work. Spring came, and the fields had something in them. He could see the rows from the porch in the early morning, green against the dark soil. Not much yet, but there. The fence held along the south line. The barn roof had shed 2 rains without letting water in. He had stopped keeping a list of things that needed fixing and started keeping one of things that had been fixed. The porch post that had been split at the base was repaired now. He did not know when that had happened. The well rim was clean stone, the cracked section filled and sealed. The north wall of the barn had new boards where the warped ones had been pulled. He was not always certain which of the 5 had done which thing. He had stopped needing to know. They did not work the same way they had in the first weeks. In the first weeks they had worked in parallel, 2 operations in the same space, careful not to step into each other. Now, when one of them started a task, the nearest person picked up the other end of it, without being asked. The older man and the young one had learned to work a post, without either of them calling out. The tall woman and the spokesperson did the same with fencing. When the girl carried water, she carried enough for whoever was closest. He noticed this without saying anything about it. That was his part of it. He had a part now. He had started doing his part of it too, without deciding to. He went to the barn in the mornings, knowing which of the 5 would already be there and which ones would come later, and he planned the day's work around it. He made more coffee than he needed and left the pot on the stove where anyone could reach it. He had stopped locking the house at night, not because he had decided the locks were unnecessary, but because he had stopped thinking about them. The fields were coming in. It would not be a full crop. The season was too far along, and the soil needed more than one turning, but there would be enough to put something by before winter. He had not had a year with anything put by since before the war. The man from the Caswell parcel had not come back. The county road had stayed quiet for 3 weeks. He did not think the matter was finished. But it was quiet now, and that was what there was to work with. That evening he made a meal and they ate at the table, all 6 of them. It was not the first time. He had stopped remembering which night had been the first time, and that was its own kind of information. The bread went around. The older man passed it to the young one without looking. The girl ate steadily and without comment, the way she did everything. The spokesperson said something low to the tall woman that he did not catch, and the tall woman made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been something else. He sat at the head of the table because that was where his chair was, and he was not thinking about it. He would not have called it a family. The word was too large or too small. He could not decide which. He would not have called it anything. But when he looked up from his plate and saw 5 people eating at his table without asking if they were allowed to be there, he thought that maybe this was the shape of a thing, even if the thing had no name. He passed the bread when it came to him. He took the stone from his coat pocket on an evening in late spring. He had been doing it for years, that small movement, the hand going in and the fingers closing around it, the way you reach for something without knowing you are reaching. He had touched it on the morning he came through the gate, without thinking about it, the way you reach for something before you are sure you will need it. It had been in that pocket for so long, it had become part of the weight of the coat itself. He had not known what it was doing there anymore. He was not sure he knew what it had been doing there at the start. He stood at the window of the back room and looked at the sill. The sill was narrow and dusty, and it caught the last of the evening light through the glass. He set the stone on it. He did not put it back. He stood there for a while, looking at it. The way you look at a thing that has been in your hand so long, you have forgotten what it looks like from the outside. Small, smooth, a stone. He had carried it through a war, and the years after, and the morning at the gate, and everything that had come after the morning at the gate. He had not set it down when he went to sleep, and not when he ate, and not when the standoff happened in the yard, and he had not set it down the night around the fire, when he said a thing to the flame that he had not said to anyone. He set it down now. It was on a window sill in a house on 40 acres, and that was where it was going to stay. The fire in the stove knocked once and settled. Through the wall he could hear the sound of someone out at the barn doing the evening check, feeding the horse, closing what needed closing. He did not go to see who it was. He knew without checking. The horse was calm. It had been calm for a while now, since before the standoff, since the girl had made a practice of talking to it in the early mornings when the rest of them were still waking up. He could hear it sometimes from the house, a low, patient sound from the barn, the horse being addressed and not objecting. He looked at the stone on the sill for a long moment, and then he walked out of the back room and sat down at the kitchen table. The evening was settling around the house. In a while someone would come in, and someone else would start water for the morning, and the house would go about its business. He had not known until lately that a house could have a business. He had lived alone in a room above a stable for 8 months, and before that he had been at war, and neither of those things was a house with a business. He did not know what the man from the Caswell parcel was planning. He did not know what the county would look into, or when, or what it would find. A man who had lived in a county for 22 years did not give up because a standoff went against him. He would be patient. He would find another angle. The road had been quiet for 3 weeks, and it could stay quiet, or it could not. The world beyond the fence had not finished moving. He had understood that for a long time. He put his hands on the table. He was not reaching for anything. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like. It helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much.